The following is an encore presentation of New Expressions.
Friday morning. It's a beautiful Friday morning because my amigo here, and he bought me coffee. I appreciate that. Love you, brother. Every Friday you bring me one of these without fail.
Yeah, I do a decent job of the coffee run. You know, the coffee boy, the lackey, the guy who supplies the caffeine for the New Expressions radio program. And you are listening to New Expressions, obviously, because it's Friday morning, 10 a.m. And every Friday morning between the hours of 10 and 11, you get to hear, a bunch of people bragging solidly on King Jesus for the best part of that hour, where we talk all things kingdom. We celebrate, kingdom activity in the region. And we enjoy hearing from senior leaders in the body of Christ around what the Spirit of God is up to, typically in our region. Today, we've got a super sub flowing in all the way from the US of A to be guest with us. Previously, a bunch of times already on the New Expressions program, but author, preacher, the Prince of Preachers, I'm pretty sure, and lyricist and songwriter and psalmist and all things incredibly created by the Holy Spirit. Brian Zahnd, welcome to the New Expressions program.
Thank you, Craig. That's high praise that you're giving me. Now I got to try to live up to it, but it's great to be with you. You're one of my favorite people, Craig, in that you are a constant encouragement. I've never been around you or got texts from you, because you text me from time to time, that there wasn't just, a profuse amount of encouragement. And so you're our Barnabas, son of encouragement.
Come on.
Son of encouragement.
I'll wear that any day of the week. I'm a big fan. I don't know. We had the privilege of ministering together in Albuquerque, New Mexico, a bunch of years ago now, when friends of ours, I call him Papa Steve Stewart, the Stewart family, the founders of Impact Nations Global Missions Movement. They were hosting a beautiful gospel conference. Who else would they get to a beautiful gospel conference to speak other than the guy who wrote Beauty Will Save the World? Well, you ripped it off from a pretty prolific author as well.
All great titles are stolen. I mean,
but that work in particular, which that's got to be 15 plus years old, more. Beauty Will Save the World.
I think it came out in about 2012, maybe.
That's what I had. Yeah, and honestly, that was such a shaping book for so many. And for me personally, I have this passion around evangelism and the idea of having a narrative, a story, a gospel that is truly beautiful, is something that I'm trying to champion amongst my peers in the ministry of evangelism, particularly that we would have something cohesive that is reflective of the Father. And you've given us that and plenty more since.
Yeah, Beauty Will Save the World was my third book. I have 12 out now. And people ask me all the time, what's your favorite book? It's like asking what your favorite kid is. You just can't answer that. But I do have a tender spot in my heart for that book, Beauty Will Save the World, which, in case people don't know, yes, I stole the title from a line in Fyodor Dostoevsky's The Idiot. That's where it comes from, Beauty Will Save the World. But it's such a great line. So, I like that book. I mean, I do. I like that book, and I like some of the thinking I do with that. So when people bring that up, even though it's been out for, 14 years now, it makes me happy.
Do you know, and you pointed straight away to Dostoevsky, and I, I know that he's perhaps not the average punter's go-to read, and I once heard you say that Dostoevsky's writings, and I think it was the brothers Karamazov that you were talking to, was the pinnacle of literature ever written. There's something to that, like the praise that you gave.
I think that the brothers Karamazov is the greatest novel ever written. I'll stand on the coffee table and insist. Now, recently, no less than David Bentley Hart, the colossal intellect of our age, disagreed with me in public about this and said, no, it's not. He said, no, it's not. And I said, well, what is then? And he would not nominate another book. He said, well, I don't know. Okay. I said, this is not how the game plays. This is not how the game's played. So until you say something else, I'm standing my ground on the greatest novel ever written. What it actually is a marvelous, beautiful theological work disguised as the greatest novel ever written.
Yeah.
I've read enough academic theology, and seriously, you have no idea. I've read like boatloads of academic theology. It is the novel that just shows up over and over and over again. So it is treated by serious theologians as a serious theological work itself, even though it's a novel. It's a whodunit, who killed Fyodor Pavlovich, and I'm not going to give it away. I did 2 years ago. I did a online course. Let me tell you about this, Craig.
Yep.
People know that I love this book. I've read it 11 times. I quote from it constantly. And I'd always said, I want to lead a class. I would like to teach a course on the Brothers Karamazov. And finally our staff said, just do it online. I didn't know how much interest there would be. I thought maybe 20 people would be interested. So I just put it out there. So for a donation of any amount, you can register for this 10-week course. 1,600 registrations. 1,600. So I guess there is some interest.
I've got to say, because I didn't know about Dostoevsky, I didn't know about his writings. I'm not, a lyricist. I'm not looking for, literary genius and whatever. But you have highlighted, tweaked, focused on, in your preaching, because I follow that every week. You often find a point you draw from his commentaries, writing, and you said, this is the pinnacle of literature ever.
I think it is.
And I went and Googled. I thought, well, my friend BZ thinks that, so it must be pretty good. Well, it turns out you're in very, very good company, because even though David Bentley Hart might disagree, Albert Einstein entirely agrees. Did you know that?
Take that, DBH. Take that.
In your face. I can say that because I've met him a couple of times when he was in Australia, and I never got to in your face, DBH. But no, Einstein actually said this is the greatest piece of literature ever constructed, and I thought, that's
I'm with Albert on this one.
I think you are.
Me and Albert, we're like this.
So it caused me, because a good friend of ours, also at that the Beautiful Gospel conference in Albuquerque with Impact Nations, Bradley Jerzak, I was at his place in January, and I said to him, look, BZ keeps bashing on about Dostoevsky, and particularly brothers Karamazov. How do you pronounce it?
Karamazov.
Karamazov. That's the correct pronunciation. Let's go with that.
The accent is almost always on the next to last syllable in these Russian names. Karamazov. Okay. But don't worry about it. Say however you want.
I haven't
Rose
lost.
K.
We're Aussies. We can butcher the language however we want.
Yes, trust me. They do a very good job of that. It's the only country where I've been to where sometimes the nickname is longer than the actual name itself.
Right.
Oh.
Right. Well, you'll pick up on a few things, don't you worry. But I said to Bradley, I said, have you got a spare copy of this book? Because BZ's keep continually referencing, and I think it's time I took the time, the discipline to read the book. And he goes, oh yeah, I've got the perfect, and it was the copy that you often relate to. Is it Katz? His
Katz. Katz.
His translation. And so I said, well, I'm borrowing it. This is a borrow, and you have to come and get it back.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's perfect. That's perfect, Craig.
Yeah,
I'm borrowing it. You can have it back anytime. Just show up in Sydney and ask for it. I'll give it to you.
Yeah, we'll pick you up. You got to stick around for a couple of weeks and do that. But some extraordinary literature there. And only recently you did another online class on demons, which I registered for. And
another Dostoevsky book. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do a course on The Idiot, which is where Beauty Will Save the World comes from. The last 2 years I've done the first 10 weeks of January, and my wife has informed me that this will not happen. She says, I I want to go somewhere warm in January, and so we're not going to do that course and stay here. So, but I will do it eventually.
So let Perry know that the downstairs guest room is completely cleared out, and January we're ready to go.
Yeah, but you're not all that warm in January. I mean, you're warm enough, but
no, we're hot. It's like 35, 40 degrees.
Summer.
Yeah, 40 degrees.
Seasons are reversed here. It's still summer.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I had to get. Okay, I was thinking. Yeah, everything about Australia just confuses me. I get everything mixed up. Yeah, I never know what time it is there or anything.
Yeah.
What day it is.
It's Friday.
What side of the road to drive on?
It's Friday morning.
Yeah, you make that mistake once.
I was with some friends one time, and they know I like to ride motorcycles, so we're in Sydney, and they put me on a bike, and man, left side of the road, roundabouts, which we don't do that much in America. I was just praying in tongues,
That's how you get through. I didn't realize you're a bike rider. I'm a bike rider. I happen to be. Yeah.
I'm more of a retired bike rider at this point, but yeah, I've ridden a lot of bikes in Australia. Yeah.
What do you ride?
I'm a Harley Road King.
Yeah. I say I'm a bike rider because listening audience will possibly know it was only a month or two back I got given a bike from one of our good friends down the road and a bunch of pastors that all decided Craig needs a bike. So I now have a big adventure bike, a big CF Moto 450, and they're all listening going, are you seriously calling yourself a rider? You only just got on the thing.
I'd be happy with that, but it's not working for me. Sorry.
Yeah, Evan's not allowed to ride, so that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah. So you're riding a Road King. I was told if I come home with a motorbike, I'm roadkill. So that's just it. Nah, she's not having it. She's not having it. So,
typically the wives are not as keen on this.
No, not at all. Not at all. So, look, we got 3 minutes before we go to the first break. How we want to end this one?
Well, I just want to just highlight a couple of things. One is, BZ, I think since we last talked, maybe we might have been on air once together since then, but I know we actually ought to be calling you Dr. Brian Zahnd or Dr. BZ because you have that doctorate now that's been recognised with St. Stephen's University. I just think that's a spectacular day. And really, it goes to your teaching grace. There's a phenomenal teaching grace that you carry that manifests itself in online schools, and you can find those online. Word of Life Church, WOLC, is the little abbreviation you guys do for your website, WOLC.com. I think that's right, isn't it? Yeah, and then I find you on YouTube. So I listen to WOLC sermons every week on YouTube. That's an easy place to find you as well. But you can just Google and find all the books that BZ's written. How many did you say we're up to?
12. My 12th just came out May 19th. And I've signed a contract with Simon & Schuster to write 2 more books in the next 15 months. I don't know what I was thinking, but I signed the contract, so I'm going to do it.
Mike, that's just, of course. That'll be brilliant. So, I wanted to take a moment to say to our listening audience here on the coast, there's lots of resource. There's online resource, there's books and so on that you can find. BZ, I appreciate your ministry. You said I'm an encourager. Well, it's because I think that the influence for me and my predominant grace in the ministry of evangelism has been so prolific, and I honor that. I have such regard for your influence in the way in which I get to express ministry here in the region, in the country, and also when we're traveling with Impact Nations around the world. So appreciate it. Listening audience, look him up, BZ, Brian Zahnd, Zahnd, and you'll do yourself a favor and find some glorious truth in it all.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
We'll be back, folks.
You're listening to 94.9 on the FM dial. This is Rima Central Coast, and you are listening to the New Expressions program, where we just have a whole heap of fun and talk and explore the King and his kingdom. We're referring to Jesus, who is Lord. There's perhaps the boldest political statement anyone could ever make. Jesus Christ is Lord, and we affirm that wholeheartedly here today. And you are listening to the New Expressions program, which, Eben, is in fact the highest rating Christian radio program on the New South Wales Central Coast between the hours of 10 and 11.
Also true.
Yeah, on a Friday morning.
True.
Yeah.
What time is it now? What time is it now?
It's between 10 and 11.
All right, rock on.
Friday morning. And before you ask, yes, this is the only Christian radio program between the hours of 10 and 11 on a Friday morning.
Also true.
On the Central Coast.
Minor detail, we are the highest rating program. Listening, if you're listening in, you can hear two American accents, not just Eben as per usual with his L.A. drawl. What? But we got... I had to get it in.
Oh, I have no drawl.
But all the way from St. Joseph's, Missouri, Pastor Reverend Dr. Brian Zahnd, prolific author and theologian and preacher and orator. Mate, I just love listening to you preach because I go, oh, this is just a vibe.
All the way from Missouri.
Missouri. There's a big debate about that, but I'm on Team Missouri.
Missouri, same here. It's Missouri. Yeah. What it says to me.
What's the debate? What are you talking?
Missouri.
Missouri or Missouri?
Yeah.
Oh,
Missouri is a little more, if I dare say, a little more what we might call redneck.
Yeah.
What he said. Yes.
I say Missouri.
Yes. Yeah, Missouri.
Although, we're talking about your southern drawl, I've got the Midwest twang, so
we love Jesus.
We love Jesus, that's it.
We love me some Jesus.
There we go. Well, and so we've got an opportunity to hear from you, BZ. You mentioned that you've just recently put out a book, May 19, and Unseen Existences. I've heard through some of your preaching, there's just some little ideas that are emerging in all of that as well. What's captured you apart from a deal with the publisher to pen another piece of work, in particular this?
Well, first of all, what I write is what I cannot not write. I don't go looking for books like chasing them with a butterfly net, and trying to find them. I write from a place of passion. And so this latest book, Unseen Existences of Heaven, Earth, and the Divine Mystery in All Things, is a book about heaven. That's the first thing I want to say. But let's say something here. This is not escapist heaven, It's all going to burn. I'll fly away. I don't care about God's good earth or justice in this present life. No, it's not escapist heaven. I'm not talking about that. It's not sensationalist heaven. You have those books out there, My 30 Minutes in Heaven and I Saw the Streets of Gold. This is not that. This is not sentimental heaven. These are the memes you see online of your departed rock stars jamming together on pillowy clouds in heaven. This is not that. Rather, this is a book that really explores the unseen world, the other world, the spiritual world, the world that is commonly called heaven or the heavens in Scripture. This is why Paul says, we look not at things which are seen, but unseen. For that which is seen is temporal. It's passing away. That which is unseen is eternal. But also I'm tying into this book the concept that life is a pilgrimage of the soul toward our true telos, or goal, or aim of union with God. The book opens with this line: we're all born a long way from home. which that's an interesting line, I think. We're all born a long way from home. And what this life really is the long walk home. That is itself part of the transforming process of us increasingly learning to become at home with God. And participate in his divine nature, which is what we are called to do. So that's kind of what the book is about. There's a chapter on angels, and so I kind of want to provoke people with the idea of unseen existences and the reality of it. I think people will find it both helpful and interesting. I think people will not be bored with this book. I think. I mean, that's what I'm hearing anyway. It's been out for a month or almost.
Yeah. That's one thing that people are not responding with in your writings is boredom.
I'll tell a story. If we have time, I'll tell a story.
Yeah, yeah.
And I want to be careful how I tell this because I really don't want to tell the story in the way that there's bad guys, because I don't feel that. But the original manuscript ended with a short story. It's 10 chapters and then a fantasy, a 7,000-word short story called The Reverend. And it's based on a historical figure. He's just identified as the Reverend in the story, though, but it's actually based on a historical figure who gave his blessing on the English colonists' attack upon the Pequod tribe that led to the Mystic Massacre, where 600 Native Americans, 600 Pequod tribe people were murdered by English colonists, and I think it's the date escapes me, maybe 1641, something like that, around that time. And this is historical. He stood in his pulpit the next Sunday and roared, "Thanks be to God that on that day we sent 600 heathen souls to hell." I was reading an essay by a Native American, M. Scott Momaday, when I was on vacation 2 years ago. And I said to my wife, I said, "Can you imagine that guy at the judgment seat of Christ?" Well, the next day, I went on a long solo hike. Perry was not feeling up to a big long hike, so I went on a solo hike. And on that hike, this story, this fantasy came to my mind. What is it like for this man to appear at the judgment seat of Christ? It's a fantasy. I don't know. I mean, what does any of us know? But I wrote a fantasy on this man called the Reverend having to face what he had done in the name of Christ. But the publisher was nervous about it. Their pushback was, but it sounds like, you might be hinting at post-mortem salvation, to which I said, all salvation is post-mortem. but I could not persuade them to put it in the book. They have been, people can figure out who I'm talking about, but I'm not. They've been good to work with. They've been lovely people, very professional, but here there was just a disagreement, and I didn't win. So what I have done is publish it in serial form over the past 4 weeks on my Substack. And it's all out there now. So as of today, it's all available, and it's free. My Substack's free. So if you want to read what I intended to be the conclusion of Unseen Existences, The Reverend, a fantasy, go to my Substack. It's free. Read the 4 installments of The Reverend.
Yeah, you might remember, but I jumped in very early when you made these comments on Substack and put out the first. No, before you put out the first. And I'm saying, this is so unfair. We need to see the whole download.
Oh,
right
yeah,
now.
I'd forgotten.
Do you remember that?
I do remember. Well, it's all out there now.
Yeah, I know, because I've been tracking it. It's a spectacular piece of writing. And, there you go. So Substack's another way in which you can connect and engage in with BZ. When you were talking about unseen existences and angelic realm and so on, I wonder if you can just retell a story for my personal indulgence. And it's the story that features in Beauty Will Save the World. And it's a story where you had to do a retake and think, am I an angel? Because because you bought a book
all right, how much
you
time
already
do we have?
Yeah.
5 minutes.
So, how much time we got?
5.
I got to tell it a very abbreviated version.
Oh, well, you can tell in the next segment if you want to, because we'll have 15 minutes in that one.
Oh, so we'll just leave them hanging, huh?
Well, let's go to a break now. We'll come back.
You know what? Let's just save that for our next segment, and we can We can talk basketball, we can talk books, or we can talk whatever you want to talk about.
Let's go to a break and we'll come back. You have all the time you need. We'll be back, folks.
All right, great.
This is Rima 94.9, and it is New Expressions, and you are listening to an extraordinary guest from all the way over the other side of the world on the globe sense, Missouri, St. Joseph's, Missouri. Brian Zahnd is joining us again. BZ, I call you. Because
that's what my friends call me.
Yeah, you said that. And here's the thing. Here's how I know that. We were first time I ever met you, and I said, we're at the event in Albuquerque, a beautiful gospel conference, and I said, oh look, we're going to go to air. What shall I refer to you as? Pastor Brian, Brian Zahnd. He says, well, my friends call me BZ. You can call me BZ. And I've been trying
I usually say, you can call me BZ if you're going to be my friend. If you're going to be mean to me, then I am the Right Reverend Dr. Zahnd.
Well, I think you might have figured out I was on board pretty early. BZ. So we were talking just before we went off air about a story where honestly I heard it told. I mean, I'd read it in your book and then heard it told again of a time when you were in Paris in Notre Dame well, actually you were traveling there or traveling back, and you deliberately made a choice to buy a copy of a book that you already had multiple copies of.
Yeah.
And that actually inspired me to go buy a book from the same place as a gift to the guy who was hosting us.
I was just there last month. We're talking about Shakespeare Company in Paris.
Yes,
I was there last month.
Yeah. At that little bookstore, the Shakespearean book company that's located there. Mm-hmm. And you'd mentioned you got a stamp from that store. The inside well, I got him to stamp the book as well for Steve Stewart from Impact Nations, going, well, BZ's got a copy of one of these. Here's your copy as well from the very same shop. Why don't you tell us that story? Because I find it fascinating, actually.
Yeah, this was 22 years ago, coming up on 22 years ago. Wow. I think it was October 9th, 2004. It's the day that Jacques Derrida died, the famous French philosopher of deconstruction theory and literature. And I was attending a multimedia presentation on the history of the great Notre Dame Cathedral. And so I'd taken the train, because I was staying way up north in Saint Denis, and I'd taken the RER, the train into the city, but I got there early. I still had some time on my hands before the program began. So I went across, just go across the bridge, of the river to the other side. And I went to the famous English bookstore, Shakespeare and Company. And I thought, well, I'll get some reading material. This is 22 years ago. We weren't reading everything on our phones,
Sure.
And so I went over to the Russian masters. Here's Chekhov, here's Tolstoy. Oh, I found what I'm looking for. And I purchased a paperback copy of The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Now, the odd thing about this is I already had a copy of The Idiot. I had a copy of The Idiot in my hotel room. a nice everyman's library with a silk ribbon and the whole business. But I thought, well, I can knock out like 45 more minutes of The Idiot. So I purchased The Idiot. Yeah, I know it's extravagant, but it's essential to the story. And The Idiot and I, we go to Notre Dame. We sit through the presentation. I'm sort of moved by it. It wasn't really very spiritual. It was more just about the architecture and construction, but still it moved me. And when it concluded, I just bowed my head in this great cathedral and prayed a simple prayer. I said, God, use me more in this city. The Idiot and I, we got up, we left Notre Dame, got on the train. I'm just, I'm reading The Idiot, and people are coming and going. I pay no attention. A young man got on board and sat right opposite me, and he spoke to me in English, and he said, oh, that's an interesting book you're reading there. I said, well, The Idiot? I said, yeah. I said, have you read it? He said, I'm reading it right now. So there's this coincidence, and it leads to us having a conversation. And I said, well, what are you doing? He was Asian. His name was Yu, which, by the way, makes telling the story kind of fun. Yu was with me on the train in Paris on the day that Derrida died. And I asked Yu, what are you doing in Paris? He said, I just graduated from college, and I'm backpacking across Europe. I said, oh, that's awesome. I said, what was your degree in? He said, I got 2 degrees. I thought, ooh, a go-getter here. And he said, I said, what were your degrees in? He said, my degrees were in political science and world history. And I said, oh, that's a great combination of degrees. Political science, the study of human attempt at self-governance, and world history, the record of our failures. And he laughed. And then at one point I asked him, I said, well, okay, you're a young man, obviously bright, and your life lies in front of you now. What hope do you have for this world? And he said, oh, I have no hope. I have no, oh, that's so sad. He said, I have no hope. And then he said to me, I didn't bring it up. I'm just minding my business. He brought it up to me. He said, I heard that Fyodor Dostoevsky was a born-again, that's his term, not mine, born-again Christian. Do you know anything about that? I said, well, as a matter of fact, I do. And so I told him the story of how Dostoevsky had lost his faith as a teenager, and he was part of a subversive writers group, ended up getting arrested, was sentenced to execution, but at the last moment, the execution was commuted to 4 years hard labor, 4 years exile in Siberia. I'm telling this to you on the train in Paris on the day that Derrida died. And so I just tell him Dostoevsky's story. And I said, when he was going into the prison, there was a woman handing out books, and what it was a copy of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And for 4 years, this highly literate man, the only thing he had to read was Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. He read it over and over. He especially loved the Gospel of John, and this led to a revival of his long-dead Christian faith. And following that, in one way or another, the Gospel shows up in all of his great novels.
Yeah.
This is what I'm telling you on the train in Paris. Then you said to me, he said, what do you do? I said, well, I'm a pastor. He said, no way. I said, yeah, I am. Then he got real serious. He kind of leaned forward and he said, well, since you're a pastor, I'll tell you something. He said, I grew up in a Christian home, but in high school, I became an atheist. And I've gone all through college as an atheist. But today, I went to Notre Dame just to see the architecture, you know. I said, yeah, I understand. He said, but the moment I walked in, the beauty of this place spoke to me so profoundly that I knew there was a God. I knew there was a God. And I tried to pray. I said, God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I walked away from you so many years ago, but I don't think he heard my prayer. That's what he said to me.
Wow.
I said, you? He heard your prayer. I was just in Notre Dame just now. I also prayed there. I prayed, God, use me more in this city. And you know what happened? God said, wait a minute. I can answer both of these prayers at the same time. And I had to buy a paperback copy of this. I have a hardback copy, a nice hardback copy, sitting in my hotel room that I'm taking the train back to. But I had to have this copy so that you would see it, and we would have this conversation.
Wow.
And it would come up to this moment that you know that God did hear your prayer.
Wow.
And beauty is drawing you, just like it says in The Idiot that we're both reading, beauty will save the world. The beauty of Christ is drawing you back to himself. I said, would you like to pray right now? And he said, I would. And I just kind of led him in a prayer to return to Christ. And I was sort of oblivious to how much time had gone by. When I said, amen, I opened my eyes and we were at my stop. I said, I have to go, you. And I just jumped off the train and off it goes. Wow. And that's Craig, that's when I stood on the platform of that train station and thought, I feel like an angel. I said, whoa, I feel like an angel. People have asked me over the years, did you get his email? Angels don't ask for email, okay? They just don't. There you go. Yep. No, I didn't. But, this is 22 years ago. Let's say he was about 22 then. So And I never did learn where he was from, but I think he was from Singapore because of his English. And I know I could be wrong, but I think he was from Singapore. And so I like to imagine that there is a man, now he's in his mid-40s, in Singapore. And ever so often he tells a story. He says, well, I was in Paris on the day that Derrida died. And I was on a train. And I met an angel reading The Idiot. And then he tells his story.
Imagine that telling from Yu's side.
Exactly.
Just glorious, and so beautiful in a pointer to the fact that Christ is drawing all of his creation, as our friend Bradley says, all things and all people. Just to emphasize that all people.
Actually, Jesus said that, but but my good friend Bradley Jerzak is right to emphasize it.
he has a nice little cut up of that. Yeah. And why not? And beauty will save the world is really for me a real challenge for us evangelical Pentecostal Christians, Protestant Christians, who might want to take a moment to revisit what we have understood the gospel to be, and just to put it under the microscope of beauty. I think it was you, BZ, that introduced me to philosophy, true, good, beautiful, and that we've had a real go at arguing truth with the marketplace, and trying to wrestle down, well, we've got the truth and you don't, and that hasn't gone particularly well with us. Similarly,
what you're talking about is the transcendentals.
Yeah,
the true, the good, and the beautiful. This comes from Greek philosophy. They're transcendentals because they transcend the need for utilitarian justification. We want the true because it's true. We want the good because it's good. We want the beautiful because it's beautiful. They don't have to do anything else. Later on, these concepts get adopted into the church, and they say, yes, this is true. God is the true, the good, and the beautiful. And then the church developed over time a great tradition of defending the truth concerning Christ. We call that apologetics. The church developed a tradition of trying to define the good in the light of Christ. We call this Christian ethics. But then there's this third transcendental, the beautiful. The church has been more hit and miss with what we might call Christian aesthetics. But my point is, at this current moment, when the wider culture is suspicious of the church making any claims to absolute truth or a superior ethic, the way forward may be through beauty. In other words, if we take our stand right now in the marketplace of ideas, and we announce, hey, everybody, we have absolute truth, and we know what's good for you, and we meet at 10 o'clock on Sunday mornings. Well, I can imagine how that's going to go over, right?
Yeah. So, yeah. It's going to go over the same way here as it might go over there.
Right. So the way forward is, can we learn to enact the beautiful? Not harp on about it, but just live beautiful lives in the name of Christ or as an imitation of Christ, and see how that attracts people.
You might call that cruciform living, self-emptying, self-giving, flooding the world with love and forgiveness living.
Yeah.
That seems beautiful to me.
Amen.
That's an exhortation to the people of God, particularly here in the region of the Central Coast. Let's be people who flood the region of the Central Coast with love and forgiveness. Let's major on that. Let's, explore what it is to empty ourselves in love towards our neighbor, to those who are suffering, to those who are experiencing injustices. And maybe even let's recapture justice while we're on that. That's something that's becoming stronger in your voice, BZ, as I listen. The idea that justice according to the kingdom is always restorative. It always returns the person, the situation to the good, to its original intent. It's not a picture of punitive function, but but restoration. And we want to be about the restoration of all things, because the King seems to be about that.
Amen. Well said. Look, we got 5 minutes. Let's land this puppy.
Well, why don't you drop those thoughts that you're obviously brewing about what I just said, BC? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, justice. The fifth beatitude, I believe it is, or maybe it's I have to count them, fourth beatitude. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for, well, we're used to in English hearing the word righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. But it's the Greek word diakosune, which is also the word for justice. English is sort of an outlier in this issue in that we have these two words, righteousness and justice. Most languages don't have two words like that, it's just one word. And so you can just as easily translate, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they shall be satisfied. In fact, that's how I tend to quote it, because that's a legitimate translation. The problem with the word righteousness is people either hear it as too close to self-righteousness, or they hear it as some technical term in theological disputes. I'm afraid that when we say, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, too many people hear it as, blessed are those who hunger and who really, really want to be spiritual because they will really, really be spiritual. and that's not what's being said there. What Jesus is saying is more like this. Blessed are those who ache deep down within for the world to be set right, for they will be satisfied with what I'm doing.
Wow.
And so justice is not punishment. There may be, in certain ways, some element of punishment present in the pursuit of justice, but justice itself is not punitive. It's not retributive. It is restoration. It's why I love that word, apokatastasis, and I just dropped another Greek word on y'all.
Yeah.
But this is a beautiful word. We can find it in Acts 3:21, where the Apostle Peter speaks about the times of the apokatastasis, the restoration or universal restoration of all things, is how some translations render it.
Yeah.
And so this is my robust hope that Christ is going to reconcile all things unto himself and set right all that has gone wrong. And
Hallelujah.
while we are waiting for that to happen, I want to the best of my ability to participate in that coming to pass. And it begins with me, right? It begins with me being restored and becoming the kind of person that I need to be. So I don't mean to harp on this, but in this short story, this piece of fiction that I wrote that's not in the book but is on the Substack, at one point his guide, the spiritual guide that's going to help him, says, look, you can come to the light when you can come to the light. There is a you that is known and there is a you that is unknown. So we think about that moment when Jesus says, it's dreadful, depart from me, I never knew you. What is it that the omniscient Christ doesn't know?
Yeah.
Well, what the omniscient Christ doesn't know is something that cannot exist. And so for Jesus to say, depart from me, is actually a grace. It is a mercy. Jesus refuses to give ontological being to that which is never intended and cannot exist. When we try to live out through our false self into the ways of sin, we are trying to live into that which ultimately cannot exist. And God refuses to grant that false existence ontological being. And so when Christ says, I never knew you, he's speaking to the false the false self deformed by sin. There is a true you that Christ will ever and always call into being. And so that's kind of what I set forth in the form of fiction, what that might, just in an imaginary way, look like in the Reverend. But I find that all very, so we talk about justice, we talk about the restoration of all things, the apokatastasis, and we talk about that Christ is not going to grant ontological being to that which cannot exist, because ultimately evil is not a creation of God. It's a marring of the good. It's a tear in the fabric of goodness. It's a hole. And so in one sense, what is a hole? A hole is nothing, but we can see it as it mars that which is good. But if the garment of goodness is perfectly mended, then what happens to the hole? It's just gone. So when God completes his work in Christ of restoring all things, so that in the end God will be all in all, as it says in 1 Corinthians 15, what happens to evil? It's just gone.
Yeah.
It no longer exists because it is not a creation of God.
I'm hearing something very, very good. People are going to have to come back and listen to this. You'll pick it up on the podcast at New Expressions with Rima.cc later. You want to keep listening to it because there's plenty in here. Our guest today has been Brian Zahnd, all the way from the US. Thank you so much for giving us some time today, BZ.
Thank you, Craig.
We'll see you next week, folks.
You've been listening to an encore presentation of New Expressions, which can be heard live every Friday morning at 10 a.m. on 94.9 Rima Central Coast.